Oh, gosh.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'll going in for Tara, Norm Dowdy, and all the April 23rd, 2025 Bond Accountability Committee meeting in session. Like we always typically do the introduction. So as I said, I'm Norm Dowdy, going in for Tara. According to her LinkedIn post, she's back east. She ran her 10th Boston Marathon. Wow. So I've been on the committee for 5 years, and prior to that, started after retired, 40 years in the industry.
My name is Amy Wong. I'm a PTS architects based back in Portland, but
My name is Ryan Kinsella. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also on the BAC, and in my professional life, I'm the director of capital asset management for Oregon Metro.
Chris Dunning, I have 3 years like all the students. Recently joined the Bond Accountability. Very happy to be on.
I'm Stormy Shanks. I'm the Senior Director of OSM. And we'll let most everybody here who needs to introduce themselves will be presenting later. So we'll have them introduce themselves when they're. Right. Do we have any public comment today?
Unfortunately, no. No one signed up.
Our next, I forgot to put a slide in here, but our next agenda item is actually adoption of the minutes from last time. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to check out those minutes. Those are on the website. And this is a new process that we're doing based on guidance that we got from our board manager about public meetings requirements.
Were the minutes sent us, or did they just let us do? Sorry.
They, you know what, I don't know for sure. I don't remember if I sent them or just included them in the meeting materials. Maybe we can move the adoption of the last meeting minutes to the next meeting along with this meeting's minutes. And we can send the ones.
Send them out and everyone maybe can respond electronically. You know, and they look fine.
Yeah, do that. Or the process was that since we have the recordings of the meetings, that suffice to meet the requirements of having documentation of the meetings, but we've gotten new guidance about those requirements for this particular meeting. All right. The next item on the agenda is our bond program update. So this slide we have in here, every time this describes some of the constraints we have on our business equity data that you'll see throughout all of the reports. So those are a snapshot in time, and they require the contractors and consultants to report into the system, and that data is typically lagging behind our financial data. So they're not always the same moment in time that they're a snapshot of. And these definitions are for reference. So you'll see these green, yellow, red status in all of our project and program reports. And so that's what these green, yellow, reds mean. All right. So starting with our 2020 program. 2020 is, really just nearly wrapped up. It's 99.9% spent. We have about $400,000 to spend in that program. And what we will do with it is we'll do some follow-on projects at Grant that are some lessons learned about maintenance and access and some systems there that we need to really improve on after that modernization. So those will be small projects at Grant that will complete hopefully this summer.
Or you said 20.
I'm sorry, 2012. I misspoke. This is the 2012 program. Yes. So 2012 is nearly complete. We'll be looking to close this program out completely and financially, hopefully by December. Our 2017 program is 91% spent. The Benson High School modernization is split funded between 2017 and 2020. So what you see here is 2017 funding and the actual spent on that. And so you'll see Benson again in the 2020 program. So our Lincoln, Kellogg, McDaniel projects are complete. Benson is in the kind of closeout phase right now. Our health and safety program, we're getting close to being spent up on the health and safety program, which had an original budget of 158 million. 150 million of that was bond funds and 8 million was grant funds. So we're getting close to that. We're right now prioritizing some additional projects to complete that program. Those will mostly be roof projects, fire alarm replacements at buildings where those are very old and outdated, and they don't make parts for them anymore. And then some life safety generators and inverters to cover emergency lighting, and a well at Skyline. The Skyline that's way out there. So other than that, we've got some contingency left in the 2017 program. We've talked before that we are managing some claims on the Benson project. And so once we know more about the conclusion of that process and how much of the contingency that will require, then we'll be able to allocate the remaining contingency to additional health and safety projects or projects that are included in the scope of the 2017 bond.
You anticipate in resolving the Benson change orders that it's going to be all within contingency funds that are available?
It'll be within contingency funds that are available. Yeah. Any questions on 2017 program? All right, we'll move on to 2020. So again, here you see the Benson funding from the 2020 bond. Our Jefferson project is in design right now. CBSE, we still have not spent the capital funding for the facility project. The district is still defining the program for the CBSE and is in the process of defining and making decisions about the facility, whether it will be an asset that we acquire, a tenant improvement in an existing facility that we own, or a new build on a property that we already own. Cleveland and Wells are both in design right now. In a little bit, I will share an update on our cost reduction efforts that we've been in on the 3 high school modernization projects. Roosevelt Phase 5 design is, it's really a feasibility study that is pretty much complete, and we'll get an update on that project at the next BAC meeting. MPG is open and in closeouts, and you'll get an update on curriculum here in a little bit. And our technology projects, we had an update on at the last meeting, and we will hear more updates on infrastructure projects today from our project managers. So for our contingency amounts, we need to, because contingency is a risk management strategy for our program, we won't allocate contingency until we know that we're past the risks that could become realities. So right now, that contingency is supporting our mostly our Jefferson and CPSE projects because we haven't gotten into the meat of their construction phases yet, or the project on CPSE hasn't started at all. So we need to maintain that contingency to mitigate risk on those projects that haven't entered their construction phases yet. Questions? We're 48% spent on 2020 bond program.
That's a question. Does the technology route with the ERP?
It does.
It does. I think we did talk about that last meeting.
Yes. Yeah. We will have an update on the ERP project again at the next meeting.
Okay.
So I'll have her, I will have the project manager make sure to include that in the answer to that question in that presentation. Okay. Overall, overall bond progress, actuals to date is 2.08 billion out of $2.7 billion of funding. Okay, modernization cost reduction updates. The last time that we met was in January. And so we talked in that meeting, we got our project managers gave updates on the modernization projects that are in design right now. And we talked about how the projects had been paused in their design phases to study cost reduction strategies for those. That happened at the end of November. Shortly after we met in January, there was a February 11th board meeting, and the board provided staff with guidance for what they wanted to see in that cost reduction. And they have referred to that guidance as the framework. And so we've all kind of internally referred to it as the framework ever since. And so that framework included reductions in the square footage of each building based on guidance to reduce the size of the building down to the kind of recommended educational specification program areas. So our ed specs have what we refer to as kind of the minimum ed spec requirements is that recommended program area. So it needs to have this many general classrooms that are this size, this many labs that are this size, et cetera. The ed spec also includes kind of optional and preferred areas that are in addition to the minimum. So what the board asked us to do was to study the cost savings associated with getting back down to that kind of minimum ed spec and at an overall square footage of 295,000 square feet. And so 295,000 square feet comes from Lincoln. So this building that you're in kind of represents the benchmark for an ed spec high school. And this building is also similar to our new modernizations because it was a complete demolition and a rebuild of a new school at 1,700 student capacity using the same ed specs. So that was one part of it. We also took a look at the ed specs include a health center and a teen parent center for each high school. So the board had us take a look at that and only include that in the design if there is a provider who is committing to staff the health center. So at some of our locations, the county staffs the health clinic, or I think at Benson, maybe it's OHSU that staffs that clinic. So if we have a commitment from a provider to actually provide services in that health clinic, and then for the teen parent center, they said only include this in the project if there's a demonstrated need. So the decision so far is that all 3 locations will have a health clinic, and Cleveland and Jefferson will have teen parent centers that will probably be smaller than the EdSpec standard size. We found that there isn't a demonstrated need for a teen parent center that's as large as, that has as much square footage as what the EdSpec. But Wells will not have a teen parent center. And all projects, the board made it clear that all projects need to continue to conform to the all-electric requirement in our climate justice policy, and need to still pursue our equity and contracting policy and administrative directives. So the goals around certified firms remain the same. And so after studying that,
Does that include the workforce development components of?
yes. So our business equity policy includes workforce requirements. It includes contracting with certified businesses, and it also, the third component is equity in career learning opportunities. So our contractors provide career learning opportunities for our students as a
The green building component, is it just like electrification, or does it have requirements around?
It does have a requirement around LEED certification, and that's something that the board asked us to look at. You know, how can we kind of integrate what we actually value in LEED certifications into the project without actually being certified? We don't want to. What we're trying to avoid is pursuing LEED credits just for the purpose of being able to get LEED certified. So if it's something that we value, we want to go ahead and do it. So one of the things that's been mentioned in a lot of board meetings is air quality, and one of the LEED credits that contributes to air quality is low VOC materials, and that's a LEED credit that you can get. The board finds it important to include low VOC specifications in our project, so they want us to go ahead and do that. But we can do that without being LEED certified. We can just include it in the specifications, hold the contractors to those requirements, and track it on our own without, you know, submitting it to the LEED organization.
All the major projects to date have been LEED certified.
They have, yeah.
So you take the lesson, what you learned from all that and
Yes,
just apply that to future.
yes. And our design teams are very adept at, our contractors only know to meet LEED requirements because the designers know how to take LEED requirements and translate it into drawings and specs. So if it's in the drawings and specs, the contractors will do it. And our designers are very adept at understanding what the LEED requirements mean and how to incorporate those into the specs. So we're still looking at that. We're still looking at the cost associated with actually certifying, and if there are any credits that we wouldn't normally pursue, that we're only pursuing because of the requirement to be certified. So after we looked at all of the components in the framework, and we're still searching on some of them to find more savings, but we're forecasting a savings of $33 to $67 million across the 3 projects as a total, based on the framework guidance. And so we're still looking for more savings in CMGC contracting terms. We're developing new guidelines for our teams on insurance, making sure that we don't have overlaps in insurance that we're paying premiums for that we don't need to pay. We're making our kind of auditability easier so that it's easier to detect if there's something in that they're interpreting as a cost of work that the contract wouldn't allow as a cost of work. It should be part of their fee. So just making making it more detectable and easier to audit our CMGC contracts. So those are some savings that are not, they're not calculated in that range yet. And we're still looking at things like evaluating structural systems, evaluating mechanical systems, evaluating materials, the skin of the building and things like that, roofing and glazing and all those things. So right now, the savings are mostly from square footage reductions and changes to the site. I think it's mostly the square footage, and then for Wells High School in particular, the original comprehensive plan showed relocating or reorienting the track and field and the surrounding stadium, and this new plan won't do that. It'll stay where it is. So kind of cutting out scope that it doesn't have the amount of benefit to the athletes that would justify the cost.
Does like the savings compared to the like out there in the media, like schools and everything?
Oh yeah, so the cost of our projects, it's, as you probably can guess, it's hard to take these projects and get them equalized so that you can compare apples to apples. So even when we try to compare on a cost per square foot, if we're normalizing all of the site work as a cost per square foot of the building itself, you can't compare it because Beaverton, for example, isn't, they're not including the cost of their fields and their athletics into their projects. It's a separate project they're doing later, and we are. So, you know, for Jefferson, for example, it's all new athletics, and so when you try to normalize that, it makes the cost per square foot of the building itself look really high. And so there are still differences. That Cornerstone report, I don't remember if we talked much about that at the last meeting. So Cornerstone Management did they did a report for us comparing our 3 modernization projects with, first of all, they compared Beaverton's project to Lincoln because Lincoln is complete. We know how much it costs. And so they applied some escalation and sort of compared Beaverton High School to Lincoln. And then they compared Lincoln to our 3 modernizations that are happening. They identified some differences in cost and some areas where we should look for savings. And that was really what the framework was based on that the book gave us. So they said, you know, you've got some square footage in your buildings that Beaverton doesn't have for health clinics and teen parent centers. You've got an all-electric building. If you want to save money or if you want it to be more comparable to Beaverton High School, you might look at adjusting those requirements. The board decided that they want to keep that requirement. And then our pre-construction costs are higher than Beaverton's. And so we found that that's a function of different scope. So we ask the contractors to do different efforts during the pre-construction phase than Beaverton does. And so we're looking at that, see if there is scope that we can cut from the pre-construction services to save money, and that if it doesn't have the value for us that makes it worth the cost, then we can decrease that amount of scope in pre-construction.
It was a similar CMGC.
It is, yeah. Yeah. It's Beaverton's project is being the CMGC of Skanska, and they took us on a tour of it a few weeks ago. So we got to see how it's going there and see kind of some of the materials. There is a difference. There's a pretty big difference in the kinds of materials that they're using, particularly roofing and skin materials. They have a lot of metal panel on the outside of the building. Our projects tend to have, like Lincoln here, it's like a concrete rain screen system. It's just a higher quality and more durable material for the envelope of the building. So there's some quality differences there, and then there's some kind of values that the board holds that they are requiring us to include in the design for the projects, like the all electric and, um, you know, continuing to include these health centers and teen parent centers where it's appropriate.
Our discussions and comparable on achieving public schools versus. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't, the Cornerstone report didn't really comment on that, and I think it's one that's a little bit difficult to quantify.
Remember on the committee was the guy involved in you were here.
Oh, it's involved in Beaverton also?
Yeah, and we were looking at how we were doing here. He commented that comparing to Europe, it's comparable as far as we weren't achieving the goal, but we were achieving. Beaverton.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Our goals might be different, but
Requirements
what
here
we're,
probably aren't creating more costs than might be.
right, so I don't think that it is, it wasn't brought up as a cost difference between us. Yeah.
You mentioned you were talking about deficit
Mhm.
material. Is there a trade-off between construction cost and?
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, our roofing, you know, Beaverton has like a single ply membrane roof, which is like that white kind of rubbery material that's flat, flat roof. Our typical roofing standard is a
Two-ply SPS.
two-ply SPS. Can you describe it?
It's a multi-layered system that you have essentially like at least two, if not three layers of waterproofing built into the roof system. The other difference is that with the single-ply TPO type roofs, those tend to get pretty slippery when it's wet, so they're a lot more difficult to do maintenance on, do repairs on during the wet season, the big season here in Portland. And whereas the two-ply SBS, those usually have a granule layer on them, which gives traction to it, so it's pretty easy for workers to be out there in any weather. And again, with the multiple layers, you've got multiple layers of protection. If you have some damage in that one, you're not necessarily going to get a leak starting.
Seems like a pretty significant factor, like if Beaverton.
Yeah,
I mean, those are exciting, but I just wondered that.
it's not being quantified on a whole building level yet, but we do somewhat quantify it on a kind of a system level. So I don't know if we have I don't know if we have quantified it for the roof, for example, but we do know qualitatively that the roof that we specify costs less to maintain and lasts longer. So the life cycle cost of it is lower than the single ply SBS. And the other kind of consideration is that we tend not to have enough budget to do the maintenance that we would like to do to get the full life out of our building facilities. So this is how we end up with deferred maintenance, right? That turns into capital projects. So if we did the regular maintenance instead of deferring it, we would be replacing the roof in 20 to 30 years, but with a single ply roof. But if we don't do the maintenance and we defer it, we're probably replacing it in 10 to 15 years.
Another kind of key thing with the roofing is that with the two-ply SBS, you can always put another top cap on it when it starts to get towards the end of its life, and you buy another 15 years. With the single ply, often when those start to get to the end of their life, that you start to see issues with the underlayment and the structure of the building, and so you can't necessarily do an overlay, and you have to do an entire repair off it. So your capital costs at the end of the project life.
Trade-offs.
Yeah, but it seems like that increases.
Yes.
Not just for aesthetics.
Yes. Yeah. So the next steps in the cost reduction process is to go back to the board once we have we're going back to the design process, so we're re-entering schematic design phase with the understanding that these the changes that we've made in the area programs, that the board has accepted those. So we're moving into the design phase now again, and we will get updated cost estimates and update the comprehensive plan that shows the scope, schedule, and budget for each project. We'll go back to the board and present that, and that'll be the new approved scope, schedule, and budget that we will carry throughout the rest of the design phase and the construction.
Are you investigating or is the
Oh, is it? Yes, so certainly ETO incentives, we always pursue those. And then depending on the project type, sometimes we'll get seismic grants or other, types of state grants for capital improvements. And so those tend to come after we need to be able to fund the project and get going with it. So it's possible that there could be grants coming for these projects. And then we just have another team in the district that really works on applying for those grants and understanding them. So they're not here tonight, but we always are looking for grants, and past projects have definitely had grants. That when you look at the VAC reports and you see the columns that say bond funding and then other funding, much of that other funding is grant funding.
If it was in the federal, that's gonna be probably cut it for us.
I am not aware of any that's federal. It tends to be OSIM grants, and OSIM is the Oregon State Capital Improvement Fund or something. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's a state thing. Our seismic grants are state grants. ETO incentives are local grants. So I'm not aware of anything that we use that's federally funded. Yeah. So the updates that I just gave you are a summary of the updates that have been given to the board. So if you would like to see any of the memos that we've created or exhibits, check out the board book website. Those are all in there from April. It was March, I want to say March 18th, April 8th, and last night, April 22nd, last one.
the target savings?
They didn't necessarily set a target savings for us. I think when we first started the cost reduction studies, we said based on this framework, it looks like about $20 million of savings for each project. And so that's what internally we were kind of thinking, okay, 20 to 40 million per project is what we'll probably be able to find. And we've been on the low end of that because, we haven't cut some of the square footage. We've kept the health centers in, we've kept these teen parent centers in for the most part. And so we haven't realized all the savings from every square foot that of possibility in that framework. So the savings, once we understand more about what the cost of the modernization projects will be, that savings will then be allocated to other priority projects, other priority facility projects that are, mechanical, roofing, safety, siding, all of the priority deferred maintenance and health and safety projects that we have. There's much more need than there is funding. Be able to use it for updating our elementary and middle schools.
Yeah, it's replacing Anderson.
The contract with Anderson on Jefferson was terminated a couple weeks ago. And we will be recompeting that very soon. The RFP will be published. 2025 bond vote is May 20th. We'll publish the RFP before then, and the deadline will be after. Other modernization question? Great. Marcus, you're up. Curriculum. Do you want me to pull your? Okay, because you're probably not on the Zoom meeting, right? Okay. And you can just tell me when to change slides. Just go ahead and introduce yourself since I didn't give you a chance at the beginning.
Walfield, curriculum adoption program manager. It's you and my boss, Joanna Toby.
Hi, good evening. I get to work with Marcus. I'm a senior director in the office. Bond side of the curriculum side of the bond work.
Yes, I'd like to first state that this version that you're going to see is different than the printed, as there's been some revisions post submission. And they should be up on the website tomorrow. First, I'd like just to, as usual, go through the adopted materials. Here we have a overview of previously adopted materials from 2020 until 2024. The most recent being the right side, K-5 Science, Amplify, social, SEL, Social Emotional Learning, Wayfinder and Renewable Culture, K-5 Mental Health, Caring Guidance, MindWise, SOS, and for K-12 Nutrition, Caring Guidance. Since our last meeting from November to until now, we've been working or doing the process of field testing in 912 Science and K-12 Health, which are content areas in accordance to ODE's adoption schedule, with 912 Science being postponed for a year, and then Health being on within the adoption schedule, ODE's adoption schedule, and we'll speak more about the health schedule in the coming slides. So the status of our adoption is 912 Science conducted a field test with 11 high schools and with the subjects of biology, chemistry, and physics. The vendors were HMH. I'm bad with that name.
Mifflin Hartford.
Open Science Ed and Savez. Field testing concluded April 18th, with selection occurring this week or next week, hopefully to get our suggestion or selection to the board for official adoption by May. I didn't hope. K-12 Health or K-5 substance abuse prevention. We have the RFP out and its application is due on April 25th for curriculum development. And for 6-8 substance abuse prevention, we are currently field testing, and that should wrap up in May. For 912 substance abuse prevention, field testing has been postponed until fall 2025. K-5 comprehensive K-5 comprehensive Sexual Education, CSE, is curating materials with the lead teacher team, and that has started. 6A, Comprehensive Sexual Education, has field testing with 2 open source curricula, and training began at the beginning of this week. 912 Comprehensive Sexual Education, contracts are being developed to align existing lessons with updated state standards. Here we have a chart of the adoptions, their status, and anticipated board approval date. The K5 Health is a multifaceted content area. As you saw, it has sexual education, it has nutrition, it has violence prevention, and mental health. And so what happens is the content area has faced challenges with scheduling field testing that may require swapping with other content areas in order for the particular lessons to be taught in a out of order. So to have an adoption that occurs through all those facets seamlessly together in parallel. So that requires a little more logistics, with possibly working with other content areas, science for instance, science and math, switching out possibly some lessons for science for health to fit, and for us to have a parallel adoption that ends at one time. So we're in the process of brainstorming of either presenting, making the adoption into 2 parts, one part going forward to the board this May, and then the second part continuing on through the 25-26 school year and and concluding adoption in the spring of next year, 2026.
Which is allowable parent postponement guidelines. So we're working really hard to be in alignment with ODE, as Marcus shared with the visual earlier. And this content area is challenging, as you can see, because it holds many pieces and many grade bands. And so we may lean into the allowable 2-year postponement period. What it requires us to do, and what we're familiar with, is make the board aware of that in the fall, and then we have the 2 years to wrap it up. And so, in partnership with the team, we actually met with them today. It's likely it'll extend into another year, just to be thoughtful of what Marcus really thoroughly explained, being the scope and sequence. It's sort of funny to say, okay, normally this content would come next, but the team wants to pilot during that time, right? So example of, there are some things that wouldn't be content-wise coming up until the fall. And so we want to give teachers that authentic opportunity to be in alignment with the scope and sequence, or be creative and swap some things with, say, maybe science or something like that, if it makes sense. If it doesn't, we're advising the team to make it be a little bit more of a natural within the total scope and sequence, so that it feels really great pilot experience for our teachers.
So here's a tentative adoption schedule with 912 science and social SEL, K12 health, and SB3 implementation occurring this year. The caveat with K12 health being extended.
And the SB3 being the financial literacy and career and standards that were really brought forward for high school specifically. So this is actually a new course. It doesn't really require technically a formal adoption by the board, but just want to name it on here as one of the bodies of work the curriculum teams are really working on this year.
can you go back to the previous? I just want to state that, the content areas in the blue more than likely will require the upcoming bond to fund those. So just to put that up. And here's our budget. And we are in the black. Any, the next one.
Just on that, because you say it in black, the forecast is the same.
No, I mean that our projects, all the projects have funds in them.
So,
And then over.
I see. And this may have been covered before my time, but
That takes into account other funds, which were predominantly ESSER funds, to COVID, non-bond funds.
I see.
So we have general funds and then we have ESSER funds that contributed to the adoption phase prior to purchasing durable materials that are bond defensible. And there are two portions to the adoption. We have the pre-adoption, and then the actual purchase, and everything prior to the purchase is funded by, we call those adoption funds. We call them adoption funds, general funds. And when a selection is made for a vendor, everything is compensable, being licenses and durable material, then those are purchased through bond.
Just looking at construction budgets for experience.
Yeah.
Under every line item. Exactly on budgets.
Yeah.
It's a little.
Yeah, it is,
Well,
yeah.
and it pulls in multiple funds. So, I mean, if we're using bond, we're using general fund, we're using formerly ESSER, now we cross it ESSER. So this is a slide that does tend to get a lot of.
It's a lot of numbers. The other thing to point out, I think we talked about this. I don't remember if it was the last meeting or 2 meetings ago. The curriculum adoption schedule and the funding was planned with the understanding that the 2025 bond was supposed to be the 2024 bond. So there was supposed to be a new bond with new funding for curriculum starting in November of 2024. The board delayed that bond vote, that referral, to next month. So there was a gap of 6 months. And so there were, if you look at the original budget of 53.4 million, and you see the current amount of funding of bond funds in there, in that column is 63.3 million. There were funds added from the program contingency into curriculum to cover that gap in time, so that the curriculum team could continue their adoptions.
Maybe one more question if I could. In the previous slide, you mentioned first, it's like first. That implied lower cost as well. It does.
Yeah. The non-budget side of that, just to kind of add to the whole picture of this, a material is an open source material and there's no cost. We still follow our state's guidance, which includes for the adoption of materials that go in front of the board, and prior to going in front of the board, having a review process for families to be able to, weigh in and see the materials. And so those are pieces that we name in our adoption process. And negotiation on. So we name that even though it's zero cost.
Here's a look at our schedule. Starting with health. Being in the, one of the revisions we had to make with these, that we, after the meeting Joanne and I had with K-12 health was revise the definition stage and implementation. That out a little further. And that's reflected here on the health 5566 line. And 612 science has gone through the definition stage. It's actually, that should be a blue color there.
Making progress this year.
So where the selection is occurring very soon. Next slide. Open the floor for any questions. It happens yearly. It happens really according to ODE's presented at the beginning of the slides, which is on a each content area is on a 7-year cycle. So just every year, it's a new content area that should be adopted. So there's multiple requirements that fit adoption. You can review existing materials. You can do an independent adoption. You can do field test materials. You can continue what you have if it's standards. So there's room for that. It's just all about, we put together an AIR committee, which is an adoption structural resource committee, teachers and content experts, and hopefully even parents are hopefully they review the material that works, and they vet the materials. They look at what's existing. They look at what needs, because the state puts out, they do reviews of material too, and they like put out suggested material, like what meets their standards, the state standards. So this AIR committee takes those into consideration, looks over all the materials, then narrows it down to the top 3 or 4, and then edit those in schools. So then we accumulate data, feedback from the teachers, from the students, and for an analysis, and which came out being desirable.
I think to add to that, I think that's current state, and that's a very thorough process currently. And thanks to the Bond 2020, this is where we're at now. I think it's important to name and know that there was a bit of a drought prior to that, and we were in BPS not in compliance with the state adoption cycles. And thanks to the bond dollars, we now are able to do that. As you can see, these are quite large numbers to make this all happen in a district our size. And so thanks to these funds, we're able to do that work.
You're up.
I'm Damon O'Shea, senior EMCM with COSM. This is Harrison Park project. We just hit substantial completion on this last week, 22 months. The one comment on this slide is my report on the apprenticeships and all of our equity stuff. We have a different report from, right? So on the right-hand side of that, basically we are That's our goal of 20% of apprentices, we're at 22.5%. And minority is 25% goal, we're at 43. Women participation goal is 14%, we're at 7. So that was only one. It doesn't really, it's just a little bit different report than I get. I didn't clearly said that though. We're targeting, already posted all of our risks, so see if there is accurate. Hoping to return what we show, but we still have some to wrap up and close out stage now. But I feel safe about what we're showing right there. And the goal is obviously to have a few, I would say, probably around 20 or so, change orders that are turned in, we're going through right now. Yeah, well, but that risk I've shown. And also I'll share that along that way, we pushed back on and rejected $2 million of claims, change orders, and cost increases. So share that as well. Any questions on that part of it? So this picture here, this is a 1949 classroom. And picture this classroom times 22. And that's what 1949 it was. It's actually pretty amazing what the teachers have done and worked in, and pretty impressed with how they just power through it. So super happy to make this statement. They've been fantastic work with the staff. The students have been fantastic. It's helped make it successful. We've had zero issue. Zero issue. So that's the same classroom that in the slide before. It's keep in mind some of those floors. I had twice as many slides. I know we didn't have 3 hours to go through everything.
Damon is very proud.
There's a lot of work going this way. That floor in 1949 wing, some of those floors took 2 3/4 inches of filler to make them up. That much size. Teachers that had books under cabinetry and shelving to make that level. It's I'm not kidding you. What they work with was pretty tough. But anyway, so now that's typical. Now all the classrooms, they're all saying that the technology upgrade, we've got every classroom has been upgraded. It looks like this with new furniture. That's cafeteria. One picture of the old, it was just old clear concrete, some rebar even exposed in it. And it's actually it's a liquid miracle method, and we had to we could not add filler in this space because of the span of the floor. The structural engineer, because it's got a crawl space in it, it could not take the weight. So we had to find the material that was light enough, but steel silk, that also sealed the floor as it like it. And this worked out fantastic. So the custodial staff loves this floor. You see, it's non-porous, easily wipes up. So always thinking about the CapEx versus OpEx, right? So same thing in the corridors. Couple things happening. You can see that's a couple of pictures of the old corridor, which it looked like. On the left is, and all 4 of those, not only showing you the corridor, what it looked like, but the CMU walls, just how narrow the halls looked and how closed in. Very, it was actually kind of, you didn't know if you're gonna hit a dead end or not when you walked in there. So we blew out a lot of those walls and formed the extended living area, which you'll see here. It's an amazing difference. I see teachers and administrators in there all the time, just sitting in there, having meetings with students, or even just sitting down. It opened up the space. Awesome. It's really lit. And in that area, there's also a new teacher workroom, new space, printer and stuff in there. Teachers love it because they don't have to walk to the south end of the building now to get their print. So anyway, that place turned out fantastic in that area. Got a little show and tell before. Those were actually working bathrooms. Yeah, so, like I said, pretty incredible. So obviously, all of them now look like what you see on the right side of the slide, and same type of thing. The floor is now coated, non-porous, easy clean.
It's the same Miracle Method.
Yep.
On the wall, that?
Yes, and actually, thanks for mentioning that. So you see the orange tile on the left, old glazed tile. It's actually a really robust tile, 1949. And the Miracle Method, instead of painting it, we use the Miracle Method because it etched and for the painting, you get scratched off and so forth. And so far, it's been fantastic.
It's like an epoxy product or something.
Yeah. It's subsequent, yeah. Two shots on the left are the old tiny bathrooms in the old the health room area. We're able to make two new correct sized code compliant ADA restrooms, and these are also in the health and counseling area. This is heading into the north end of the building, which is the gym. And I don't know if you can notice in the upper right slide, if you look at the floor wall base, the slope in the floor, that's kind of where that sag is. That's about 3 inches. And that was a restroom right there, actually. It's not no more. We actually made that. That's a new IT room, or IDF room, I should say, because we added many more restrooms. But we, again, stripped level floor, and that's finished product you see on the bottom. Right? And kind of a similar area. This is looking north, walking into the area where just the picture before was. Just kind of showing stages. Again, it was an old 1949. Stripped it, leveled where we could up to allow maximum weight, and then polished what was there. And that takes you right onto the gym. So it's looking more. This is actually a very nice hallway. This is a 1987 edition. On the southwest corner, it's a very wide hallway. But same type of thing. Upper left, you can see the VCT and the old ceiling. And stripped it. We've done all our up above the ceiling. Obviously, all the work has been done. And it's going to actually installed now. It's all complete. And before and after, the bottom right is your extended learning area again, standing and looking around it from both hallways, which was the same as previous photos for the CMU walls with the narrow hallways. So it's kind of the view. You can see through from a building management standpoint, principal and administration staff love it. They now can see, and security officer that's in the building love it because they can see all the hallways. Good vision, good sightlines. These are right across from the gym. These are new all-user restrooms. Same type of thing. Different flooring problems again in here. It was wall-mounted toilets because the floor actually couldn't take all the holes to put in floor-mounted toilets. So I had to go back to drawing board and add a little structure and some structure underneath the floor to add the wall-mounted toilets. And then, but it did allow us to shorten the bay and open that space up a little bit, shorten the restroom pods, if you will. But again, Miracle Method in that area only, and then it transitions into the corridor, which is polished concrete. A little bit of work outside, out front. We did redo the parking lot out front and a landscape and hardscape. That was an area that wasn't being utilized. You can see the old brick, kind of retaining wall, so to speak. And there was a lot of shrubs, kind of pushed everybody to the door. So opened it up and regraded it too. It was water was draining back into the building. Grading was backwards, so to speak. So anyway, that turned out real nice. That's the main entrance there. Our new mechanical system, it's now got heating, cooling. Couple shots of old boiler in the middle. And but yeah, now it's awesome. Heating, cooling, all the rooms. Everything. In fact, we're in our tab stage now with that. Finish that up. We finished our mid-mails. The guys doing the balancing work, you know, they give pots to them, so they don't get do it like classic thing. Early in the morning, do some Saturdays, we're doing some. So.
This building had, a lot of spaces had no mechanical ventilation, so no outside air being brought in through mechanical means, kind of passive dampers in the walls behind the wall convectors, which are just a passive radiant heating source. So the air quality improvement is always tremendous.
Most of those dampers
Yeah, or sealed off.
were sealed off.
And
And that brings a good point. Pictures don't show it, but like the passive that every classroom probably had 3 or 4 open holes, so let's call them a hole wall that went right into the classroom from outside, which we filled. We infilled with brick and matched. We did a real good job. So not only is the thermal part of it and just the fresh air and just nastiness of it, there's also rats and everything else coming that way. So taking care of that problem as well. There's probably 60, 70 main gym. Again, 1949, main gym was built. So as we worked our way down through the building there, the middle picture on the bottom, I'll see all the plywood, and then the picture on the bottom right is the west wall of the gym. Both walls had to be structurally upgraded. So we found quite a few issues. So once we got that done, we refinished the floor. There's paint in there. That was the scope basically in there. Is we didn't do like slicer or original, but it turned out fantastic. Well done. That's it now. So strip that floor, just stripping it. I mean, and paint. I mean, everybody thought we added whites because that's what right in it, but we didn't. We just cleaned it up. Dance studio. So the top row of pictures there was in the Ox Gym, which was a 1975 edition. They added Ox Gym and dance studio, which is a folding wall, basically separating gym. It was pretty rough shape. Had the rubber floor from the 70s that we've seen in high school. Big thing, 70s. And then the bottom set of pictures is the new dance studio, fitness center / it's got permanent wall mount, permanent its own space. It's its own sound system in there, and especially with the implementation of additional PE needed this year, some of the programs did the space worked out real well for them. They brought in a lot of equipment. There's actually more in there than the pictures. The oxygen up at the left, same thing. It's just concrete, rubber on coated on top of it. So put new wood floor in there, paint, and HVAC, and big difference. More of the flooring. I think I stressed the floor because there's so many problems with the floor and smells in the building. That is administration office. That's a restroom floor. Another one of those is headed into the health area. The top row is existing. Bottom row is what we have shots of the furniture we brought the building for the last couple of years. Have taken on a few different couple deliveries. But the lunch tables, the classroom, the teacher desks, upgraded all that.
Any question for Damon? This was all constructed while, I mean, except for the summers, but during the school year, the building was occupied.
And that's what I mean when I say the kids and teachers and staff, whatever, fantastic. And it's amazing. Pull up asking middle school kids not to get in and mess with anything, but you know, they never get on one machine. We're demobbing now. Contractors are leaving site and we're punch trays and have all of that. So then a lot of work, but it's been very helpful.
I think they're really proud of it.
Yes.
The students, they had to, pay some costs, some, you know, dust and, sound and everything, so, yeah.
One student, our favorite quote is from one student, when we turned over the first phase, January 24, he walked in, he said, "This is like a hospital." And that was his first expression, you know, kind of funny to all of us.
No longer a dungeon.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, good stuff.
Thing. All right, Ellen, you're up, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ellen Cusick. I'm the project manager for accessibility and special education upgrades. We've been working on this for 2 years and we're wrapping up. I will say there is a little error on the forecast and the over under. I did not check a box, so you're not seeing what's getting returned to program on all of those, but it's not. I know what box to check. So next time you see this, it'll show. So I guess schedule wise, the first thing is the phase 1 is complete. That's packages 1A, B, C, and D. We wrapped those up. We're still doing a little bit of work on D with some access controls, but it's so minimal. It's nearly done. We're gonna wrap that up next week. But those were all done. We reached substantial completion in June, excluding those access controls. So phase 1 is complete. And then phase 2 are the 5 packages A, B, C, D, and E. Package B is complete, package E is complete. And package E was completed in November. They really did a fabulous job on that one. Package B was completed in December. Package A and D have been extended through October, November of next year because we had some permit delays. And the work was so invasive that we had to postpone the work at Wells Auditorium and Beaumont Special Education Restroom to the following summer because there's no way we could get it done and we need those full 7.5 weeks. So package A is Beaumont. We're set to get going on that. It's going to be quick because we've had a lot of time to plan for it. And package D, we also rolled in some exterior improvements at Dunaway. They did the interior improvements last year, but PBOT was involved in the permitting for the exterior improvements. And they take a significantly longer amount of time to review things, you know. So we had already planned to do that in this summer. So that we rolled that into package D since they'd already done the interior improvements. Package C has been a little bit delayed. Our contractor was a little overwhelmed with multiple sites, I think. So we anticipate substantial completion, I think the end of June. I'm hoping for the end of May, but I think it's going to extend into June. So budget wise, I think the important thing to know is that the over under on all of these that are complete, 1A, B, C, and D, 2B, and 2E, we do have money coming back. 1A, we've got about $368,000. 1B, we've got about 715. 1C, we've got 427, and 1D, we've got 656. So it's a nice chunk of change coming back to both the ADA and the SPED funds. We did split this construction because we were doing special education specific restrooms and lighting in special education rooms. It's dimmable LEDs in all, and in the phase 1, we were able to make some of the rooms tunable as well. And then 2B, we've got about 558 coming back. 2E, we've got 248 coming back, and I'm not confident on the numbers for 2A, C, and D because we did have to extend our final dates. So there is money coming back. I'm very pleased. I'm like, why didn't this show that? But now I know.
Yeah, it's the reports they get pulled, yeah.
Yeah, but now I will check the red box.
For our new BAC members, can you give the 2-sentence description of our 2020
Yes,
BA bond scope?
I'm sorry. It was main level accessibility at essentially every school that is not planned to be modernized. We did roll Cleveland and Wells into that because we can't know that the bond is gonna pass. So it's basically ramps, accessible entries, parking, basically sort of to get you from outside of the building at a parking spot into the building and access all main level programming, gymnasium, library, cafeteria, auditorium, main office. We installed an accessible sink in every science classroom at the middle schools, art classrooms throughout. The main office or the faculty room generally got an accessible sink as well. A lot of handrails. We have a lot of handrails that were compliant with accessibility code. So at least one stairwell in every school that was multi-level got new handrails in one stairwell. Door hardware. Yeah, we replaced like 3,000 doorknobs with levers that are now lockable from the inside, and that was part of the security scope as well. So all the classrooms can be locked from the interior, and the common areas with exit devices, you can lock them, but the locking mechanism still allows for egress. So that was a big part of, and that was, I think, every single school. There were like maybe 3 schools that we didn't do that hadn't been modernized.
So when you say we're almost done with the scope, that means that every school that's not planned for modernization will have first floor accessibility.
As well as the sped upgrades, which is the next slide. And they're so tied together, I kind of talk about them in the same way. The sped was accessible restroom. An accessible sped restroom is bigger than a regular accessible restroom because you've got changing tables, you've got a Hoyer lift to help get a child or somebody out of their mobility device onto the table. So they're usually about 10 by 16. They're much bigger than a regular restroom. A regular accessible restroom. Lighting in all the sped classrooms, as I said, LED, dimmable everywhere. Some of them are tunable. And then furniture, new furniture for every sped classroom. And that budget, which is the 60/40 line. Is that one to show up on?
Yep, this year.
Next page, thank you. The 60/40 line, I've got about 440 coming back in that one. And that is wrapping up. With a few requests from occupational therapists and a couple extra sensory spaces that we're going to outfit over the summer. And then we may be rolling some classrooms in Jefferson, at Jefferson Newsback. I've been talking with them because they're going to be in that building for at least another 3 years. And, you know, those kids need to feel a little. They keep getting pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I talk really quickly. If you have any questions, please.
Do you work with the same contractor or?
Multiple contractors on all of them. Each package was a separate contractor, although one contractor may have gotten 2 or 3 packages. They were still all treated as separate projects.
Separate procurement and contract.
Does every sped bathroom now has a Hoyer lift?
Every sped bathroom that I built has a Hoyer lift, as well as a few additional ones where they might have been damaged or built function. Or the changing tables too. Like there were a couple changing tables in schools that I was working on. I'm like, it just died. Can you buy me one? And I'm like, yes, I can get you a changing table. Yeah, they almost have an excessive changing tables in the OT department, which is good.
It's better than what it was.
Yes, they're not having enough.
Questions for Ellen on ADA instead? Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you.
You're up.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
yeah. Welcome. My name is Eric Nice, project manager for the 2023 one. Our scope of work includes installing cameras at every school and then also replacing outdated intrusion alarms as located as well. So, yeah, we initially our project is broken into 6 separate projects. So phase 1, phase 2A, 2B, and phase 3A. We are financially, we're in a pretty good situation. We've been pretty lucky where we've been coming in under budget as far as our procurement and well, we are wrapping up. Well, phase 1 is complete. We have 15 schools that are completely 100% complete. Phase 2A and 2B, so close. We've got some change orders that we're dealing with, but we should be wrapping those schools up as well. So that would be 30 schools that will be complete here probably in the next month or 2. 3A is under construction. Just about to start. And 3C, the board just approved that contract yesterday. So that was awesome. So we will be hopefully getting with them and working on a construction schedule to get them started here in the next month or so as well. So yeah, we have 3 different contractors for all 6 phases. One contractor has a majority of the phases 4, and then the other 2 have 1. So that was very nice because that was initially one of the risks that we had. So it was nice to be able to award projects to different contractors. And it's nice to see the different works as well. Visual-wise, so what you're seeing right here as far as the budget goes, it's pretty realistic. I don't really have any numbers for 3C yet, just because we haven't really started much budget. That's about it. And I'd say 3B is for the phase 3 school. I'd say, but for phase 1, 2A, 2B, it's pretty realistic, and there's going to be some money coming back. So that's it.
Is there anything in particular that's driving? Looks like we see.
Yeah. That's a great question. I don't think there is. I think just we just got fortunate. When we initially went out and we kind of when we had this initial budget for this project, we broke it out thinking, okay, it's kind of what we're looking at. Our stakeholder gave us kind of a ROM based on what they thought it was going to be. And we kind of went out from there, and it just came in really.
Sorry, the ROM.
Rough order of magnitude cost.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Based on like square footage, devices, device counts, things like that. So that was what we initially.
First year when you were working on the cost estimates, too, was that first year 22 and construction was really.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that could be part of it as well.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think it was you.
Yeah, I know.
Really good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, then again, it puts you and say, oh, great, we're working with their, yeah, good, right.
Yeah.
The procurement strategy has been successful in, kind of bundling a certain amount of projects or buildings together into a package. So not too few, not too many to get, good pricing. You're kind of getting a bulk discount, but you're overwhelming the system so much that they couldn't bid on it.
Yeah.
So
it was more appealing to the contractors. If we came out there and said, hey, here's the Indian school. Hey, we're just going to the way that we like start. feel like it was, so budget there, schedule wise, I feel like it's our biggest risk right now as far as going over. Show August 25. We will realistically, I think, phase 3 seal by the we're trying to work on that. Once we get the construction schedule, I think we're gonna get pushed out. But yeah,
It's all done in occupied buildings.
yeah. So the work's being done now during the day. A lot of the drilling and loud noises and things like that are being done from the school. And kind of similar to what Damon had, we've had very few, if any. I've had some concerns with teachers with noise that we've accommodated their requests and changed our work schedules to meet their needs. So we're not disrupting their learning. Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot on this project. I think one of the biggest that I've heard is just from the schools themselves, just like that. Risks that we do have also besides the schedule. By the initial camera intrusion, we're talking access control now. So we're meeting with stakeholders. But because we're working through that.
Mhm. Yeah, so conceptually with the budget, we won't necessarily say, you know, if we get back, this looks like about $6 million. Say we get back $6-7 million from the security projects to the program. We wouldn't necessarily say, okay, we're gonna spend all $6-7 million of that on security scope. We might say the security scope that was defined for the 2020 bond is complete. So if there's additional security scope we want to do beyond what was defined as the scope of work for 2020, we would prioritize that work along with the other kind of health and safety projects that we need to get done, all the deferred maintenance type of work. The whole bond program, you prioritize that allocation.
Yeah, so stakeholder security services pretty much outlined. So basically every restroom, not coverage in the actual restroom, but line of sight and whatnot. And then we actually walked in with a security consultant and our security services team. And they base the design off of each school division. So talking to the administrators, just past problem areas. Each school was very specific, stakeholder, very involved, and then a lot of things. We had design meetings with the school division, talk to the design, talk to the administrators, principal, got their feedback. And we didn't work.
All being recorded, so if there's an incident, because obviously with all these cameras, somebody's not watching.
Well, they're being recorded, yeah. They're on a 30-day feed, so all motion is triggered. And so that brings a good point. security services is only allowing certain shares. So, but anyone can. Only had one school. So, yeah, yeah.
All the cameras themselves.
Yeah, whoever did might have these new cameras. Yeah, they went around all the schools pretty big.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's review that.
What's yours? Any questions for Eric? All right.
Hello, all. I'm Robert Joel. I'm a senior project manager with OSM. And I am pretty heavily involved in seismic projects as well as working with Mr. Simonson on capital projects and function projects. This year, we're doing a seismic project at Maryville Elementary. We were able to complete last year's phase 1 during the summer, which was all of the classrooms and the office. We were unable to get to the library and the auditorium. And part of the seismic portion for this project is the roof. We're doing seismic tie-ins everywhere and sheathing the roof. Not quite everywhere, in a lot of spaces. We did have a concern with, we had issues, honestly, well, not issues. We had delays with the city of Portland trying to get the auditorium itself permitted. The initial design, which was based on every other seismic job we have done in the district. The structural engineer was not accepting that, and we kept recommitting, and it took 8 months to get it approved, submittal. So that has actually caused us to go into a 3rd year. Generally, we don't like to, but that's just unfortunate that we have to take. Fortunately, the staff there, especially the principal, have been very reliable, very accommodating to us, working hard with their people. Really, really good. Talking about budget in this respect, due to the permit issues we've had and the delays we've had, we will probably be over budget. Going for additional funds to cover that. The contingency will cover that. But the contract has been really good. The architect has been really good. We just had a lot of hoops to jump through on this one. This is my 4th seismic I've done in district, and this is by far the most difficult one. Short, but that's where we are.
So this one also, you can see that we got a $2.5 million grant, and that is a state grant from this, I think, SRGP program.
How do you choose which seismic project?
We, up until now, there was a prioritization done. We're working on a new prioritization. So I don't know if you all have seen, there was a Willamette Week article.
3 weeks ago or something.
That mentioned a seismic report that the Willamette Week obtained through public records request. So that report was it's a very high level summary and assessment of the structural deficiencies in each of our school buildings. And associated with that is a cost to repair it. And so it goes by, for a structural engineer, a building isn't like the whole building, it's the sections of the building, like when they were built and what their characteristics are. So some of even our smaller elementary schools, the structural engineers consider them to be like 3 or 4 buildings. So they go building by building and talk about all of the different structural deficiencies that we would correct if we were to bring the building, do a full seismic retrofit on that building and associated cost with it. That report is just an accounting of those deficiencies and costs associated. It didn't prioritize them. So now the structural engineering firm is taking that report and working with us right now on some prioritization criteria. And then they will produce a report that actually prioritizes. Yes, we did have an estimate. I can't.
Oh, it was a whole bunch.
My head. Yeah, it's a lot of.
Like 196 billion or something like that to get everything up to speed.
Oh, not a billion.
10 million.
Oh, yeah,
I
yes.
heard BT.
Yeah. Okay. Give them about that.
So it was a lot. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we can get that answer to you.
There's a considerable sum.
Yeah.
And those are, when the engineers provide us a ROM, rough order of magnitude cost, that's what they think of as, you know, kind of hard costs. So that doesn't include, you know, the district's management costs, the cost for permitting or even engineering.
Construction, installation, all the cost,
Yeah.
period.
Exactly. It's just kind of like what a construction contract would take today. We could get it executed today.
Our original quote we got from the contractor actually was below what we anticipated, not by a lot, but it was still below. So we were continuing getting some pretty good prices.
It's a food science and lens.
Creative science and went up.
So the overage on Marysville will come from the unallocated funds that we still have, those $4.2 million that we still have an unallocated seismic. So even after that, we'll still have some seismic funding that we need to spend, and we will look at that prioritization to start allocating those projects.
I'm David Mann, the communications manager for the Development Program. I just wanted to point out that since the program began, we have applied for the state funding that has allowed us to then take existing bond funds and sort of value add to that. So if we've done, typically we've already done roof on seismically strengthened roof on the site. And we then can go back and say, and apply to the state for the grant and then use those funds. We've done a fair amount of value add.
Well, at the four seismic projects I've done all that, $2.5 million. And that didn't totally fund the project, however, it was a big chunk.
It stretches our dollars.
It does, and it sort of helps us cover, whenever we do these projects and we apply for the permits, the city asks us to correct non-conforming. So say, for example, Marysville is getting at least a partial new fire protection system, right?
Yeah. No,
No, okay,
it's getting, the fire protection system is there, but it's getting seismic support.
okay,
Marysville doesn't have any NCUs.
okay. So we, you know, for other projects, you know,
Projects. Yeah.
projects, then
We run into that all the time with the city of Portland saying, hey, you're doing these significant upgrades. We'd like you to also do this and that and the other thing too. So that's fire sprinklers, parking, flow protection.
Then like 16 backflow protection devices, even though I'm not even removing a toilet.
We have a great relationship.
And we're not even talking about P-line yet.
No.
So any other questions? That's
Roofs. So I'm Steve Simonson, Senior Project Manager with OSM. I'm over the roofs and mechanical projects. Currently open that you'll see on here is only the Dunaway Phase 2, Vernon and West Sylvan. Vernon and West Sylvan are both complete. The dollar amounts that you're seeing coming back there are the total amount that'll be coming back from that. For Dunaway Phase 2, we have a little bit of TBOT work at Dunaway that we'll be doing this summer. So kind of similar to Ellen's project where as part of the re-roof that we were doing there, we were required to do some site upgrades around the school, and that took over a year to get permitted through PBOT. Also not shown on here is you'll see the 7.6 million remaining in 2020 funds. We're taking that money as well as funds from the 2017 bond to go after 5 more roof projects for 2026. It's not shown on the dollar page because the e-builder projects aren't set up yet. It's in process right now. So we'll be doing Marshall, Holiday Annex, Cesar Chavez, Vestal, and Woodmere. Those are all pretty significant roofing projects that are on our radar. 2026, we're out for the RFP for design those right now.
Can you talk a little bit about how we prioritize?
Yeah, the prioritization for the roofs. So in the past, like when I first started for the bond, it was really, we kind of had a list of, hey, we know these roofs are bad, and we would go to get regions every year and say, we know these are the bad roofs. Which ones are your worst ones? And in 2023 and 2024, we worked with a third-party consultant, professional roof consultants, to do a whole district roof assessment. So they went to every single roof on every single school in the entire district. There's 88 or 85 schools in the district, and each school has anywhere from 5 to 25 different roof systems on the building. So they were on all of those, giving the full assessments, hazardous material assessment, and structural recommendations for these roofs. So we now have this really comprehensive report that outlines where we are at as a district as a whole for the roofs. It's not a pretty picture. Their recommendations for the district is to do $150 million worth of roofs between now and 2028. There's just, physically, that's not possible to do. There's not enough roofers to do that amount of work. So we're working on stretching out those recommendations over the next 5 years between the 2020 and 2017 funds, and then hopefully that will put a big dent in these other roof issues that we have. Pretty much any of these buildings that are on this list that PRC's provided to us, you can go and look at the maintenance records. They have anywhere between 5 and 15 maintenance requests per roofs, most of them within the last 2 to 3 years.
So Steve took that report from professional roofing consultants, which sort of ranked the roofs in order of their severity of condition, and then took that and combined some other information that we have internally about number of work orders associated, kind of the enrollment of the building, whether the roof condition was urgent, most urgent over, if it's over a covered outdoor play area, that's a little less urgent than it's over a gym, for example. So we kind of looked at the level of risk there, and then he applied some calculations and algorithms to sort them by a priority, and that's how we're going to protect those.
Yeah, and we are fact checking that prioritization with our maintenance. Okay, this is what we're seeing. Is this what you guys are seeing on the ground? Does this match up with what you're experiencing? Making sure that the data that we're looking at is.
You say commercial, it's the kind of
That's a great question. I
Uh,
don't think we know offhand. As part of Marshall, we are doing a less expensive route out there. That would not, so typically, earlier I mentioned the single ply versus SPS, we're going to actually install a single ply for about half of that site. There are a few routes out there that will get the 2-ply SPS, but a vast majority of it is obviously we'll get that single ply. It's simply keeping the costs under control. Given that we don't really know what's going to be happening with it 8 years from now.
It's also costs aren't
The,
there's like coordination with structural or mechanical.
the hard cost, yeah, so the hard cost that PRC provided, the $150 million, that's a pretty comprehensive number for the hard construction costs. That does not include any of our architect costs, the permitting fees with the city of Portland, any potential unknowns that we might run into. You know, that's really looking at the brief. It's a blank slate of, hey, we know we have to replace the roof. We know we're going to have to replace some mechanical systems here. There are structural numbers included in that based off of some of our previous seismic assessments. So that is included in that number for doing the roof structure to the rest of the building. But there are certainly unknowns that we have not captured there. Yes. Yes, yeah, they include things like replacing fans and other rooftop equipment, fall protection, anchoring of any parapets, things like
A lot of stuff up there that needs replacing.
yeah, typically on a lot of our roofs that, you know, a lot of our buildings date back to the 20s and 30s, and on a lot of those fans and roof hoods are from that time. So they're well past, you know, their fixes for life. You know, we're also replacing gutters, doing new downspouts throughout the buildings, doing upgrading the drainage systems. So most of them don't have overflow drains on them; they just have single body drain. So we're also adding the overflows throughout, and that sometimes takes pretty significant routing. One thing that's not really captured in their number is any interior roof water damage that we will be taking care of in the project. But there's not really a way to quantify that, because until you go into the building and do a survey of it, you don't really know what might have to be addressed. And oftentimes, I found it on projects that I'm managing where I'll have some ceiling tiles that need to be replaced that are on my drawings, and maintenance, somebody goes through and maintenance and replaces them before the contractor gets out there. And we're like, wait, I thought we were replacing housing rooms, and I'm not there anymore. So it's a pretty comprehensive. I've been doing the roofs here at PPS since 2019, and the square foot costs, the hard costs that they are providing are fairly accurate for an average roof. The district, and they are scaled. So for example, like Holiday Annex, the numbers for that roof are like $50 a square foot, which is pretty accurate for a prefab asphalt shingle roof like that one, whereas like Vestal, I think we're closer to like $130, $140 a square foot, which is more typical for our cost for that system. If you look on the schedule page, you'll see there just the needed for the 2026 roofs. Again, we're in the early planning and procurement for the architects. Our procurement for that is due actually tomorrow, and we're hoping to have them under contract by end of May or June. So that way we can be designing these projects starting in July and running. Hopefully getting them out to bid by late November.
That's the market.
I honestly don't have a good sense for it, because we didn't have any roofs going to bid for this year. I will say that what we've seen on some of our other projects, there is definitely a lot of the GCs are seeming pretty hungry for work. So that's a good thing for us. I will say a big risk is potential impacts on tariffs. A lot of these roofs are getting materials that don't necessarily come from the US, like some of our lumber often comes from Canada. Some of the base material and some of the raw materials for the roofing might be manufactured here in the US, but the raw materials might be. That is definitely a risk on projects, given the volatility.
And moving on to mechanical. So with mechanical, so the 2020 bond, the goal of that was to replace failing mechanical systems in schools throughout the district. We've done full mechanical upgrades with those funds at 4 schools. That was Bridger, Kelly, Lent, and Harrison Park. Those were all chosen through an assessment and prioritization that was done back in 2020, late 2021. We worked with an outside consultant on that to identify sites based off of comfort, energy usage, indoor air quality, as well as looking at some equity funds, such as Title I, as part of the formula to choose those schools. Schedule wise, Bridger and Kelly are both in final commissioning right now, so we're almost done out there. We should be complete with that by end of May. Harrison Park, as Dan said, that one should be wrapping up as well. The Lent project, Robert will be managing that one. That goes through this. That was broken into a 2-phase project. Its second phase is this summer and should be complete with ready for occupancy by the end of summer with final completion sometime. All 3 of these schools are completely getting rid of the natural gas boiler systems, and so we're full electric with heating. That means new electric service. It's a pretty significant. I think Bridger and Kelly, we heard them in, I want to say it was January or February of 24, and we got them in November. So about 10 months.
We ordered about February and got it. August 7th. So just about the time the teachers returned, we're shutting down power, and bringing it back up. Yeah, that was pretty quick time.
I was, you can maybe help me understand why I thought you for that.
That would be because I forgot to update that. So for Bridger and Kelly, I'm very comfortable with those numbers that we're showing. In fact, it might even be a bit more, but I'm holding on to it a little bit as we get to our final commissioning. A minor thing. I believe Harrison Park is not giving anything back, and Lent is a bit early to know what will be coming back on that.
You should be able to get back some.
Yeah.
Some of what, yeah.
The last 2 projects listed here are 2 pulse upgrades projects. So about halfway through the design of Lent, Bridger, and Kelly, we were really realizing that the mechanical systems upgrades were going to be too costly to meet the bonds. So, hey, we're going to do this. I think it's up to 10 sites. That we weren't going to have money mechanical funds to do a full replacement there, but looking at what was going on with our schools, how they operate, and how they affect both energy, comfort, and indoor air quality, we made the decision in working with outside consultants to, instead of do full mechanical upgrades, just do pulse upgrades and get off of the aging pneumatic control systems that run most of the systems in these buildings, and switch them to a digital control. So we're the first phase of that is this phase 1 that was at 9 sites. That project is in final commissioning right now. It will be complete probably by end of May. Phase 2 is 18 sites, and that's broken into 3 sub phases of that project. All under contract, but we're the first grouping, I think, of 6 schools is our contractor is a design build with Amoresco. They're in design on that. We'll be starting construction on those 6 sites later this summer. The goal for phase 2 is to be complete by around the end of December. And that, again, that's completely taking out all of the old pneumatics that really have very little if any control over, replacing it with all new digital controls that actually do give some control at the classroom level for the teachers. So they can now have visibility on what the temperature actually is in the room, control of the temperature. And we're also doing the as we find a lot of these systems. There's dampers that haven't opened or closed in 20 years because there might be a pneumatic line that's somewhere that maybe you know about that we're now going in and making those repairs.
So these improvements, while they don't add cooling to these schools, it does improve comfort by getting the heating systems back under control. The pneumatic systems had failed. You know, some of them were cold water, some of them were kinks, the pipes were kinks, so they're not controlling. So you might have a classroom in the winter that's 80 degrees or 85 degrees because the heating system is totally out of control. So it helps with comfort. It helps with the air quality because you get the dampers working correctly again. It helps with energy efficiency because we can put more energy efficient, modern control sequences in place with the digital controls than we could with the pneumatics. Then it also allows us to be able to monitor the temperatures in those buildings from our maintenance office. So we have some contracted monitoring services that can keep an eye on things, and if they get out of a certain range, they can automatically address the issues in the building. So it's a big improvement.
It also helps from an operation standpoint because the one person at PPS that still knows how to work on pneumatic controls is retiring at the sometime this summer. And so getting onto the BPC system to where there's all that sort of companies in the Portland area that specialize in that we can call up, and we also have people on staff that can operate. So that will be saving us in the long run. Again, risks on really the only risk at this point is on the controls project. And tariffs, because we do have quite a bit of conduit, which is aluminum, and copper wiring, as well as some of the components for the conduit for the control systems with the microchips inside. Yeah, potentially. We're watching that one really closely. So far, we don't have any definite impacts because I think a number of the suppliers still have a fair amount of stock on hand because we saw a number of companies just knowing, hey, we're going to be doing this much work. We're just going to stock up a year. Once that stock starts to run out, that might start.
And the good news about these control systems is that when we do go back to these buildings and replace the boiler system with new heating and cooling systems, the controls components can be reused and applied to those new systems. So the systems are scalable and the components are applicable to many different equipment, mechanical equipment. So efficient.
We're also the final piece of that is that there have been quite a few pieces of the existing pneumatic systems that are in good shape that we have technology and handing off to our maintenance department to keep in their stock to maintain the 30 odd sites that we be remaining with the pneumatic system. The goal is that when assuming the pipeline passes, we would be pursuing controls upgrades at those remaining sites as well.
Yeah. Okay. Before we adjourn, last meeting we had talked about, I think since COVID times, this meeting has kind of worked into every other, one is virtual, one's in person, one's virtual, one's in person, but sounded like the desire for most of the community members was to go to more in-person meetings. And so I will look for a in-person location. Maybe there's somewhere, if there's a park we can have the meeting so that we all can.
Yeah, yeah. So that, it's just coined recently, myself, Andy, who's doing trade, 19, principal walked in, and school, been doing college. Andy from Cedar Trade said, well, that we were handed. And Leah's, oh, she's like, oh my God, that's it. She read by her staff, eventually like, so yeah, that's great. Anyway, that would be a good place. That's a projector, all that stuff.
Yeah, so maybe we can go to Harrison Park and then you all could get a tour of Harrison Park and see what a pool-wide upgrade that's not a total modernization looks like.
As close as you can get.
Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that the board is still trying to land on how they want to receive your reports, because what used to be the Facilities and Operations Committee was a regularly scheduled committee meeting, and it changed in the past year to an ad hoc meeting. So it's not a reliably scheduled meeting where we can deliver these reports to them. However, they want to start having those regularly scheduled committee meetings again. And the board manager was asking if May 5th would work, which seems a little bit of a short notice to get the report from you all finalized and get one of you there to present it to the board committee. So, I'll email Kara and see what she thinks about that date. And if she's able to do it, fine. Otherwise, we might have to ask to do it or something. Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Lots of work done, lots of work to do.
It never ends.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed on the ball.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And not telling you.
Yeah.
Not telling you. Yeah, it's triple negative. That makes a negative.
Everybody. Yeah.
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 They don't want to wait or too long.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
I'm hanging out in the library.
So you can get out.
Yeah, exactly.
Hanging out.
Okay.
Okay, yes. So that was.
Will be okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Things like we were on.
No, I know.
Anyway, thank you.
Yours, or it's my other thing.
Yeah.
CD number.
Yeah.
Hey, let's see what's over there.
Yeah, I know.
Where do you live? You live outside?
So, yeah, we're making. So it's like,
Yeah.